everybody. Loud and clear. Welcome everybody at this interview with Joep van Lieshout. Joep, welcome again. Together with Verbeek, Professor Philosophy of Technology, and I, Hiska Bakker, Studium Generale, we will talk with Joep about his ideas, his projects, and of course about the head. You can't miss it if you enter our campus. It's a new icon of the University of Twente, a landmark at the entrance of the campus. It's an impressive construction of copper, 10 meters high, to commemorate that the university exists 60 years. We'll talk about 45 minutes, and then all talk will be impossible, and I wrote down because a brass band of students will enter, and there's only one way: follow the music. The brass band of students is called Tohu Barohu, and near the head, the chair of our executive board, Vinod Subramaniam, will perform the opening ceremony, but he's already here. So we'll see what we are going to do. And let's first start with a short movie about the ideas of Joep, or rather Atelier van Lieshout.
Sometimes you discover so much problems and resistance and difficulties, and then I just think of myself as a rhino, like, you know, you just cannot stop me. I'm just going to push and to just continue till I get what I want. I don't accept anything. Work is absolutely like a play for me, or sports, or competition. Fights, war. We have a very nice group of dropouts. I'm joking, but I mean a lot of art people, they come from design architecture school or art school, but you also have like goldsmiths and welders and carpenters, so it's a very mixed group. I think everyone likes to build stuff and to build it fast, and that's like, it's a dynamic. So if at the end of the day everyone looks around and says, yeah, we made something. I'm the most proud of the more difficult things, where everyone said, it's not a good idea, it's not a good artwork, or it's too complicated, it's too expensive, it's too big, it's, you know, you should not do it. And then I do it and it becomes wonderful. So I created this city for slaves, and the idea was to create a utopia and dystopia at the same time. So how can you make as much money as possible? How you can use the human being? And at the same time it was a utopia because it was zero carbon footprint. It was organic food, everything is being calculated, and the decisions are being made on basis of efficiency and not on basis of ethics or ideology. So this contradiction is always present. The good and the bad, the beauty and the ugliness, the rational, the irrational. So these contrasts, they always fight within my work. I love basically everything that a human makes. I mean, I'm not really fond of trees and mountains and stuff like that, because I mean, I like stuff that is being touched. I think, I mean, if you only try to make things beautiful, it just becomes boring. ugly design is something that is needed.
It's a beautiful movie and a lot of ideas pop up immediately. But let's start with the group. Because you started as an artist in the 80s, van Lieshout, but in the 90s, in 1995, you created Atelier van Lieshout.
Yes.
So you made a group, you formed a group around you. Why is it so important to have a group?
Well, I started out of conceptual reasons. I wanted to become, let's say, an anti-artist. I wanted to really look what is the border of art, when is something art and when it isn't. So I started making sculptures of beer crates, and then I started to make furniture and bathrooms. And then I basically said, well, you know what, I'm not an artist, I just become a carpenter and plumber. And people ask me to build their bathroom or kitchen. So my role as an artist is reduced to nothingness. And that's also the time that I say, okay, I should also change my name into a brand name, a company name.
Yes.
And that's Atelier van Lieshout. And so it was conceptual, but it's also...
So it was only you, but with the name Atelier van Lieshout.
No. From really early on in the career, I had I worked with assistants and people.
Yes.
And then we had like I don't know, 20 people already then, and then we changed it into Atelier van Lieshout. There's four of them, 3 of them there.
Yes.
In the
So
middle.
do you still see yourself then as the artist, or do you see it also as the result of group work?
No, I see myself as an artist, and this freedom for me to create whatever I want, even though what I said, like, nobody likes it, everyone is against it, and when I think, no, I should do it because I feel there is something very important that has to be made or has to be discovered. So I want to be free in that. But on the other hand, there's a lot of collaboration in the studio. There's a group of 20 people more or less, 5 in the office and 15 in the workshop. They all work together to make this amazing big artworks or crazy artworks. And so it's the combined energy and creativity of all the people to make this kind of thing.
Does it start with your idea or also the ideas of other members of the group?
No, I think there's a lot of creativity in the whole process, but I think most of the ideas, they come late at night.
And they come from your brain.
When you are alone.
Well, I mean, it looks a bit like the discussion we have about science, where team science is getting ever more important. Not only the big egos with the big names, but people recognize that you cannot do this all by yourself.
No,
so in that sense,
I could never do it by myself, this kind of things. No.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great to hear.
Yeah.
And does it start with an idea, or do you have a certain intuition, a certain fake dream of what you want to make, or what you want to create?
Almost every night I make drawings and like very quick sketches. And
Yes.
I keep them, I scan them. There's thousands and thousands of them. And then at a certain moment I look back and I say, oh, this was interesting. Oh, and then 2 years ago I also made it. And then I say, okay, this is important to do. And sometimes I make a sketch and I'm so in love with it, and the next day I execute it. But all the ideas, all the artworks, they come from a small drawing.
Okay.
Actually. Yeah.
Yes, like we saw in the movie.
Yes, and there was a small drawing for the head as well. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So it always starts with a small idea, a note, a sketch.
Yeah, and then what's also very important is that normally I work for a couple of years in a certain theme, which binds all those things together. Like the new tribal labyrinth, in which I was concentrating on the reinvention of the Industrial Revolution, cryptofuturism, where I was thinking of technological solutions to solve all the problems of our society in the future, and this kind of things. Yeah.
So, do you want to convey a specific message with your work? I mean, you always try to raise some kind of controversies. It seems you irritate people even sometimes. Do you do that on purpose because you want to bring a message?
No, I don't irritate people on purpose, but I mean, you have to tickle them a little bit, or you have to bring them a little bit out of balance to start thinking, or to start a dialogue about what I make. So if everything is perfect, then everyone will say, well, there's something perfect, there's no...
Boring.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it doesn't arouse you. So there has to be something in the thing that which asks for your curiosity.
What's then the ethical drive that you have? I mean, you make a city for slaves, etc.
Yeah.
So there seems to be a lot of implicit criticism, or sometimes even explicit. Is there a specific type of engagement that you feel?
I think, I mean, if I look back and I have to really reduce it to very simple messages, it's the contrast between the rational and the irrational. The rational of science, for example, the rational of our society, the rational of organization, but also the irrationality of falling in love, the irrationality of trying to procreate, the irrationality of believing in something. That's one. Also good and bad. So what is good and what is bad? Very often opposite each other, where many times you think, hey, this is the good thing, and then you look and say, well, actually it's not so good, and the bad thing, you say, well, but there's many good things and the bad things. So you really have to think about what's good and bad. And then real and surreal, like this is a real thing, and this is like surreal, it's a dreaming image. Power is always there, life and death is always there, sex is always there.
So what you say is that you don't want to bring some kind of political message, but your work is supposed to make people think, to make people look differently at specific things.
I don't think art solves questions, or I want to solve a question, but I want to ask the question actually, and you know,
and make us think.
And make or not necessarily. I mean, I think the nice thing about art is really free in the production, but also in the interpretation. So everyone is free to interpret it, the head or any other artwork. And some people say, I like it because it's copper, and other people say, I like it because it's I can see it's figurative, it's a head, and other people say, I don't like it, I don't care, it looks like a building, and that's the nice thing. It's really, there's like, if you have 1,000 people watching an artwork, you have 1,000 different opinions. And that's the nice thing. And that's also the eternal value of art, I think, because we still look at the Venus of Willendorf sculpture of 40,000 year old, or 17th century or Middle Age painting, and we look at it in a different way. At the moment they made it, they had other intentions with it. But now it's like, depends a lot on how we interpret it.
But for instance, the Venus of Milo, it's a beautiful painting or a beautiful sculpture. It's also in a sculpture form. But do you like that kind of art? Because you
mean the Venus of Milo or Willendorf?
Well, let's the Venus of Botticelli, for example. For example, a beautiful painting of a woman rising out of the water. Do you like that kind of art, or do you think it's boring? Because it's so beautiful, there is no ugliness.
Oh, so like that?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inspired by all art, but also very old art and primitive art.
Yes.
So that inspires me. I like more, let's say, medieval, Renaissance instead of Baroque.
Yes.
So, because I like the kind of primitivity, the simplicity, the roughness of the early sculptures and paintings. But the Venus of Willendorf, it's a beautiful, beautiful painting. I will not make it myself. I think it's well, maybe later when I'm old.
But that's not your kind of art. No.
No, it's not the first thing. But I mean, when I go to a museum, of course, I will look at it and I will admire it. Yes.
Yes.
Before we go to the head, I was also wondering, is there one or maybe two of your works of which you are most proud, or of which you believe that what you want to be as an artist comes to the expression best?
Well, one thing I made maybe 10 years ago is called the blast furnace. It's the machine.
We have an image of it.
Yeah.
Peter de Eerste.
No.
Oh, no.
This is Wim Schippers.
No. No.
De eerste blast furnace.
Yeah.
This is the one.
That's the
Yes.
blast furnace.
Yes.
Here it's outside, but
Yes.
we initially built it inside, where it's like even more impressive because it's larger. So in a way, this was a reaction at that time, 10 years ago, of globalization. Like there was a designer in Silicon Valley that makes a product that is produced in China and then is sold in Germany.
Very familiar.
Yeah, very familiar. And then I said, well, but that's very strange, because then our society becomes a group of service industry people, bureaucrats, technocrats, and not really involved anymore with work and production of essential materials. So I said, no, I'm going to create an imaginary world of a new tribe that starts involved in basic production, let's say reinventing the Industrial Revolution. And that series of works called the New Tribal Labyrinth. So make tribes. Well, this is then made for the tribe of the steel makers. And steel is super important, of course, because it's the material of the Industrial Revolution. It's the material on which all our culture and all our wealth is built on. So it's the most essential for the progress of the human race. So that's the machine. It doesn't work, but could work if you would, be a little bit more perfect. And it has all the elements of a blast furnace. If it's inside, you see as well that it's inhabited. So there is a bedroom over there. There is a toilet on top.
Oh yes,
there is
you
a
see
shower.
it over there. Yes.
There is a kitchen, and below there is furniture where people can meet, where they can play cards. So basically, you see this group of people, of fictionistas, and fascinados of making steel, which is a very heavy works, very hot, very dusty, very stinky. They are so in love, they're so idealistic about the production of steel that they live inside the blast furnace and they want to become one with the machine.
Wow.
So it's a kind of in a way, it's very romantic. Like, we want to, go back to the real meaning of life. On the other hand, it's also very dystopian, utopian and dystopian at the same time, because you are, going to suffer in this like horrible machinery. But basically, that's the question, what we have. If we have something like this, I mean, it has been everywhere in the world till it's here. And what happens with the feather, with the ink, I mean, that you just take from the bird outside. So it's a question of progress, actually. Wow. And it's not against progress.
Yes.
No, I like progress. I like all this kind of stuff. But it's an essential question.
Yes.
So this is not a warning against industrialization or something?
No,
it's not a critique of technique?
No, it's breaking a lance.
Yeah, it's making a plea.
Yes.
for industry actually, and the kind of reappreciation of industry or raw materials, and it's also, you could say, with this thing you make a screwed steel that you can use to make a frying pan or something. It's also kind of going back to the essential of design, and that's it. Yeah.
But you also made this for the tribe of the farmers and the tribe of the people.
No, there was also a sawmill.
Yes.
There was a refinery, oil refinery.
Yes.
There were farms. So basically, I reinvented not all, but many aspects of the Industrial Revolution,
Yes.
and Agricultural Revolution as well.
But you make an alternative world.
Yes.
That's one of the most important, the key points of your works of art during the last 30 years.
Yes.
You always create something which is not our real society, but it looks like it, but it's another society with other rules and other mechanisms and. Okay.
Yeah, kind of alternative or science fiction, you could say, or at least like an environment where you can imagine that everyone in the group thinks in a different way.
Yes.
As a mirror, actually, to our own society.
I mean, maybe we go too fast if we already go to the head, but still a question about
the
head. Okay, because I find it interesting that you say that you gave a reaction to the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution. In a sense, when I first saw the first sketches for the head, when we selected it, and I will explain later how that took place, I had this thought, okay, this is actually about the fourth revolution, right? It's about the digital revolution, a pixel head made of copper, the metal that conveys all the signals. Would you also say that this has a place in your work on how these revolutions?
Oh, absolutely, and it's nice that you say a pixel head, because to me this head is like a very primitive head, like a head that you could imagine or made in Africa, or actually on the Easter Island. I mean, it looks a bit like this kind of big head, so made by people from a primitive culture, and therefore, like going back to our origin as hunter-gatherers or people living in trees or walking between trees. And on the other hand, it's also a head where our brain is, where we think, where we study, where we create, invent things, where our soul is, where our emotions is. And that's like looking forward. So you're looking backward, expressionist and constructivist. And the same is for the material, actually. Copper is one of the few materials that is found as metal in nature, and is the first metal being used by human beings to make jewelry or little sculptures or things. But it's also the material of the future, because there's not a single thing with a screen or a plug that doesn't have copper inside. So because it's a good conductor. And therefore it's very much related to innovation. So basically you have the two things opposite each other. And of course, it has an absolute reference to the technical university, because this is a place where people are being taught on inventing new things, creating systems, inventing new materials. But it is also the place where new ethical boundaries are being broken, because with every invention things change. With the Industrial Revolution, it's a big leap forward, but it also meant that people start living in cities, and there was like a division of work. There was there was a big influence with the technological revolution. Of course, now we see 10 years, 15 years ago, nobody had something like this. And people went to a restaurant and they talked to each other. And now you see everyone sitting opposite each other, like doing whatever on the phone. So this kind of inventions, they have a huge influence on how we work. The same thing with big data and algorithms that have a huge influence on our personality and our society. And these are things that happen, and I don't know if they can be stopped, but it is important to think about that. So this is a little bit like a little bell to remind students that before we invent, like the Nobel who invented dynamite for mining, and then of course it was also handy for war.
When I first saw it, I really thought, wow, this is, if this is at the entry of the campus, it's a kind of a permanent reminder. So the people at the university work with their heads, super rational. and then you can even go to the top of the head, right? So the most, how do you say, rational part of that head. But then you can also look
out
to the world, right? So it's also the connection between science and society. And I personally liked a lot the Easter Island story, because of course that's also a reminder that civilization can go down because of its own technology. That's what happened there, actually. So as a kind of warning that well, all the science that we make here can actually also be dangerous or something. So is that also kind of a message that you wanted to give? Is it a warning, or is it?
Well, not in such a moralistic way, but. As I say, to start a dialogue, to trigger people to think about that. But what you say about the disappearance of civilizations very often is a result of technological innovations, and that not being controlled in the right way. And it's a this is a very famous book about it, Collapse it's called. Which is about, they describe, I don't know, 10 or 20 societies that were there and then they disappear, they're gone.
Can you also tell something about the interior? Because I have not been in it, so the inner part. So in the sketch that you made at the beginning, there was a stairs, and I recall that you wanted to model it after a very old stairs, one of the oldest ones that were found archaeologically, I think, somewhere. So to go back in history.
That, but
so, what kind of interior does it have? So there is a stairs.
Yeah, there is a stairs. So it looks a little bit like it is carved out of a rock. So it's a spiral chair, and inside looks like very organic and like it's carved.
Brown.
Exactly.
So there also you come back to the human being, that one of the first dwellings was the cave dwelling.
That's what I remembered, yeah.
I had the opportunity to go on the stairs with some colleagues of mine, and it looked like a gut to me. A dime. Yes, it was warm and cozy, and it felt like
I don't know.
No,
if I ever would like to call that cozy, but
it felt cozy.
Not mine. Okay.
It felt cozy for me.
Good.
It reminded me of your mobile homes. Because they also have you feel, how do you say it, embraced by the structure, and the same feeling I had on the staircase.
I wanted that it looked like a sculpture. I didn't want to make just the stairs.
Yes, but you had not an association with your mobile homes. A space where you are covered, where rain can't reach you, where the thunder can't come.
Yeah.
No?
No.
Sorry. No, it was my impression, but not yours. Not your intention, anyway.
No, but it's also interesting to see that the interior indeed has a contrast with the exterior, right? So the interior is old. It's almost as if it's stairs made by human hands, carved out in rock, and the outside is pixels, digital. So in that sense, it could indeed be some kind of a reminder for people that, also the technology and the science that we do here in Twente comes from a long history. Copper being the connection between the present and the past or something.
Well, maybe I'll go back to your thing. And
yes,
I mean,
my
some
thing,
of the mobile is that some of the mobile homes or units I make really I use the human body and all the movements we make, and then I carved around it. So basically, the space that you need, to sit down, to stand
your
up.
bikini bar, for example.
And so I used that also in this. It's how much space do you need to walk up, and all the rest you don't use. So it's carved around the body and the movement of the body.
Did you also use copper because it will change in color?
Yes,
now it's very
it's a very beautiful,
shiny.
It's a very beautiful material. It's like if you see it, you fall in love with it. It's very warm, It's very soft as well. And if you see the sign for steel, is this? We all know this.
Okay, yes.
It's the male, and this is the sign, the alchemistic sign of copper, which means it's the sign for female as well. So copper is the warm, soft female metal, and the steel, which is a steel structure inside, is hard and masculine.
Okay, so it's the contrast again.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, the utopian, the dystopian, the soft, the
And the material, as you see, I mean, it was new from the workshop. It's really shiny copper, and then in the climate, it becomes more matte, and then it becomes liver color. Then it becomes a little bit brownish. Then it becomes brown, darker brown, and then around the wells where the water will stay, at a certain moment it will get a little bit of green, and then after 50 years, 100 years, we actually don't know. The whole thing becomes green, like what you see on roofs of churches. And then the process,
The oxidation.
the oxidation process stops. I mean, it goes very, very slowly. I mean, this will stay for hundreds of years, if not thousands. Yeah.
yes. Then we
Sorry if you don't
yes,
like it.
then we will not see the end of it. I heard that students invented a nickname for it. I don't know if you saw it or
No, I
your
didn't.
colleagues. Squidworm tentacles? Squidward tentacles?
Huh?
Yes, it's a neighbor of SpongeBob. I don't I don't know SpongeBob myself, but I
kids
think a
said the
lot
same,
of you know. It's a neighbor, and he doesn't want to work. Is there any reference to these Octo tentacles?
No, well,
Octo tentacle?
I think I missed the SpongeBob.
Yes, yes, the same. Okay, so there is not a reference to.
But it was the first thing my kids said as well
Yes?
when I showed it. Oh,
Really?
is this a SpongeBob thing?
SpongeBob thing.
SpongeBob.
Okay.
But so you used a lot of copper for
Yes.
that thing. I mean, we just had a little chat, so you were kind of relieved that it has left your workshop because finally there's space for something else.
Yes.
But can you maybe say a bit more about the whole construction of it? I mean, is it safe to stand
Yeah,
on
it's
it?
very safe. There is a steel construction inside, galvanized steel, with beams like this, like giant. It's very, very heavy. When I saw it, I said, "Is it not like a little bit too heavy?" But I mean, we didn't want to make any risk, so that's a steel structure. You can, I mean, drive with a truck. It's really strong. You can be in with 100 people. So that's the structure, and then around the structure. So depending there how far away, sometimes it is far away, is the copper, which is suspended by other copper tubes. And then between the copper and the steel there is a rubber thing, because you don't want to have this galvanization, oxidation. And what else? It is there is a lightning.
Yes,
protection.
lightning.
We were wondering with this weather.
Yes.
So if you are there and there's lightning, the lightning will go.
Yeah, there was a special company who did all the things necessary for safety.
Okay.
And there was a building permit, and Harm, did I miss something? Yeah.
Okay.
So
All things you
these
don't
were
want to think about when you're an artist.
improvised, was not improvised.
Wow. Okay. So is there some form of isolation in the foundation of the whole thing, or will the whole land around the head be electrified if the lightning hits?
No, I think, well, the whole thing is made out of copper, so it's the perfect thing to attract lightning. And then there is like copper threads, like cables, that go in the ground. So when it's hit by the thing, it is immediately goes in the ground. I mean, it should be safe. Huh?
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Wow.
Let's say something about the contest.
Yeah, maybe
Yes.
that's a good thing. So we chose actually your artwork after having made a contest. So we thought, let's do this the way in which science works. So you always ask for reviews of your work, etc. And you have to compete for a grant, etc. And you were one of the many people who wanted
50.
to send something in, And so that's also, I don't know if people here know that, but I think it was 2019 already that we had this competition, and we asked people to come up with a good plan. We had saved the money that we had in the budget of our art commission for 5 years, so that meant that we had quite some money available to have, a famous artist doing something. And that was interesting. So out of these 50, we chose, I think, three,
yes.
who also got a little bit of money to further elaborate that first idea. And you were one of them, and we were very happy that you wanted to be that. And of course, in the end, we chose you. It's also just I couldn't ask you back then, but maybe I can ask you now. How have you experienced that whole procedure? I mean, is it getting more normal that artists are asked to do things like this?
That's normal. Normally, it's always a competition. So that means they invite 5 artists or something like that, and they all have to make a proposition. And then you make it, you present it, and sometimes you win. And last week we lost one, unfortunately. But I mean, that happens. That's of course, I mean, it's waste of work, you could say, energy. But on the other hand, it's also a challenge, and you start thinking, you develop an idea, and sometimes the idea that you develop, which is not chosen to be executed, you make as an artwork. You say, well, I really like it. And in this case, the place, a technical university, and the themes related to it, it was very close to my own research, to my own work. So for me, it was like, yes, this is, so attractive. Because in my work, in my personal life, I always have been like hesitating between becoming a physicist or a chemist or an artist.
Wow.
And I mean, at a certain moment when I was 15, I made the decision based on my advice of my natuurkundeleraar, physics teacher, who was also an artist, and he said like, well, I mean, to become a physicist is really interesting, but only if you are very, very good. If you are not very good, then you end up like me, being a teacher, at school. And he said, as an artist, you can always be creative. Even if you are not very good, you still can be creative. You can still have your own research. Nice. And also, a big difference is if you study physics, it's, I don't know, 7 years or something. It's a heavy study. So I said, no. I mean, and I would have liked to become Elon Musk or the artist that I'm now.
Maybe you made a good choice then.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I would have become Elon Musk. I don't know.
It's interesting that you say this, because I've always felt that your work is indeed kind of scientific, not in the sense of doing physics, but more raising questions. It's kind of an investigation to extremes, and I think that's also the thing that really made us feel right away that this was what we had to choose out of these 3. But there were also very interesting other people who send in good plans. But it's indeed that investigation that you seem to do. There's a question that seems to bother you, or to keep you occupied. And it's also what you experience if you see that hat. It's interesting. Okay, so you have experienced it in a good way. This was not felt.
This was a very good process, and was very professional done. I really liked the presentation, which was a large group of people, and you were there.
Corona times. Yes, we were far apart. Yes.
But there was a lot of people really involved in university, really involved in ethics and in arts. So it was very thorough selection process, and very motivated people to make it happen. And I have to say, the art collection you have here in the campus, it's really good.
Okay.
It's really
Thank
excellent.
you.
I mean, it's top quality, and I have seen many universities, and it's really good. I mean, if you Delft, I mean, come on, they have nothing. No, it's serious. This is really beautiful. You have a beautiful park, nice plants, nice campus, students that are like using the campus, and the artworks like the church tower and all the other. I mean, I really love them. Yeah.
So did you have that in mind when you were sending in your idea? I mean, did you feel that it should fit Wim T. Schipper's artwork?
No, of course, the first thing I did when I hear about this thing is to come here, to look at it, and to get an idea. And and I think the landscape, it's really like a park-like landscape, which is very good backdrop for an artwork. So
there are people already making a parallel actually with this artwork and yours, because of course this looks like a sunken church. So that you wonder what is below, and of course the Easter Island heads appear to be the head of a bigger thing that was below the earth. So people say, well, maybe Atelier van Lieshout wants us also to think about maybe there would be a giant somehow below the soil, and we only see the head. So there is a connection, maybe. Even though it is.
I gave you a tour, and the other two finalists on campus. Which work of art did you find the most beautiful? Is not your word. Did you find the most exciting, the most inspiring? Is that a torentje of Wim T. Schipper's? Or for instance,
that's a really beautiful one. I think it's so strong, it's so visual, and it's like it doesn't look like an artwork, but I mean, you immediately think, what happened here?
Okay.
You know, is it real? Is it not real? I mean, and a lot of people, I mean, who come here as students, they are not people that studied art, so for them this is like a very beautiful, rough introduction to contemporary art.
Yes. Did you also see the Sardineblik of Ger van Elk?
This
one?
Also very nice.
Because they are in the neighborhood of the head.
Yes, I know.
Yes. Okay. Well, do you have another question about our campus and the other works of art?
Well, I'm not sure. It's maybe more. I was wondering how you see the link, but I think that you saw it. Maybe one other link that I was thinking of is like this artwork, Wim T. Schipper's. It's very conceptual art. And would you consider your work to be conceptual art as well? No, exactly.
Not really. No, I think it's very. I use sculpture, shapes and forms and volumes and compositions as a language to say something. And of course, there is a story that you can tell about it, but it is. I mean, it can exist very well without any knowledge.
Yes,
that's the idea. And again, for me. I don't care really how people interpreted the artwork. I mean, there is people that, well, the SpongeBob guy. I mean, I've never thought about it. The pixel head is also not in. Is also not the thing I thought about. But that's actually, I think it's very nice, and that gives the eternal value of art. I think that it's like there is not an exact explanation.
No.
And that makes it beautiful. With language, for example, is very rational, and it's a sentence and it's a word, and you can look in a dictionary. But art is much more inspired by intuition, and also what's good about art. I mean, if you write something, you have to prove it. Like a scientist has to prove his thesis. But as an artist, you have a feeling. And you don't have to prove it. That means you can make mistakes or things that don't prove to be valuable. But sometimes you make something which is like beautiful. You never had to prove it. So it's a little bit ahead of other things. Let's say like language.
Currently, you are involved. You are thinking about a new project which is even bigger than the head. It's a whole new world in Rotterdam, Brutus, in which you have buildings for artists, a museum, an art shop, but also buildings in which people can live and work. Can you tell us a little bit more about Brutus?
I can.
And is there any connection with the head?
Shape-wise, yes, a little bit.
Shape-wise, yes.
I mean, it's also a very sculptural building.
Yes.
It is made 14 years ago. I could buy a building, which is actually in my studio now, where the head is produced, and I like it a lot.
You can see a little bit of it in the
film,
movie we showed before. Yes.
And then it was a little bit small, and then the neighbor went away, so I bought that building, and then that building, and then another building.
We have 3 minutes left.
It's almost done.
Yes, go on.
And so it's a large piece of land, and then I said, well, on this large piece of land, it's in the harbor, which will be, well, let's say, part of the city. I said, okay, let's build like a cultural cluster where art is being made, where art is being shown, where other artists have a platform to show things, a sculpture garden, and all 3 housing towers with 750 apartments. Which means
huge.
It's huge. And the commercial side of that project makes the cultural cluster possible.
Okay.
Because, and then also the people who live there, they enjoy the sculpture garden. They can go to all the places, the artists who live there. So it's you create a kind of a biotope. You create another world.
Another world, yes.
Absolutely.
Well, still 1 minute left to give you the first booklet of our new walking tour of the campus, Architecture and Art.
Yes.
Peter Timmerman and I made this before. This is the 6th edition. And the first edition, in which the starting point and the finish is your head. So I really want to give it to you. It's in... Oh, there they are coming. It's in English and it's in Dutch.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.